Well, we're back again with yet another no fluff analysis, and this time, well, we're going to be addressing the rebalance of the whole adventurer system in Dragalia Lost. So pre 2.0, Shadow was by and far the most we'd call it overpowered element in Dragalia Lost, to the point where a lot of cheese clears just hinged around slotting in Shadow elements, especially Gala Alex, sometimes Garlic Cleo, that kind of thing. So 2.0, the rebalance seeks to address that by essentially, roster-wide buffs, but obviously not every character has been buffed the same, so we're going to look through that and also look at, because some of the buffs haven't been just numbers, but some characters have also gained additional effects to their skills. So we'll go through that, and first on the left you'll see here that we've got global basic attack mod buffs. So actually let's double check, is it every single one? So sword, slight buffs. Blade, slight buffs. Slight buffs all around? Yeah. Axe, lance, bow, wand, staff. So everyone's auto attacks are hitting harder to varying degrees, but obviously if it's all mostly the same by weapon, then the relative power changes aren't going to be too disparate between the elements. So let's go over mods and we'll follow the changes as we go through here. So Marty Flame Sword, let's say that's roughly 25-ish% buffs on his S1, and then his S2, strangely enough, now also buffs strength. So yeah, it's now no longer just a defensive skill, but now it buffs the strength as well. I think we saw these buffs are obviously going to be on top of the spiral, so we'll say moderate buffs due to the strength buff on skill 2. If it was a skill, like a team-wide strength buff on skill 1? Oh, actually, hold on, let's reread this. Okay, so level 3 is the spiraled buff, so he basically gained the strength buff to his pre-spiral things. So yeah, Marty pre-spiral buffed. We'd call that moderate buffs? Yeah. So next on this list is Valentine's Orion. His mods have been doubled for his S1, and his S2 has gained a strength buff. So, I wouldn't call it huge buffs, but I'd say it's like somewhere in the moderate buffs range as well. Because some buffs have been more than moderate, but not quite huge. So let's add another row, huh? Add another row. We'll label it. Let's see. Make this just this color here, and this row is this other change. No, this orange. We'll call it big buffs. And then Valentine's Orion, I suppose, would slot in the big buff section. Next is Zardin Water Sword, roughly 30, did I say 30? Somewhere in the 20 to 30% range for buffs for his, hold on, actually it changes by scale as well, so it's like plus 200% for level 1, at level 4, plus 450% is over half, but this is post-spiral. Because they were very gentle with pre-spiral going from 682% to 701, so now the post-spiral buff is that much greater. I'd call that big buff for Zardin's S1, and then S2 has been almost... Okay, yeah, 682% to 1,598% is a pretty substantial buff, I'd have to say. Is it still in the huge buffs category? I'd call that a huge buff. So next, Raymond. Raymond almost doubled the 550 to 920. Well, actually, let's just go with max level. 610-ish to 974 is over 50%, and it's also gained the defense down. S2 has gone from 2 times 307 to 2 times 491, which is an almost 40% buff as well. So Raymond, that is a pretty big buff. It's not quite on the scale of Zardin just now, but it's pretty substantial. So next is the Prince. Let's see. Spiraled S1 has doubled in mods. And Spiraled S2 has gone... Oh, it's also been doubled. And the defense down chance has been increased. So, I think doubled mods is fairly big? Would we call it big? Or do we call it huge? I think we call it huge. But that's the thing. Some mods have been even more than doubled, so does that mean we need another? Or do we need to recategorize what's going on here? I think we do want to recategorize. So next, Serena. Mods have been 2x350 to 2x595. Is a decent buff to the power level, but now the crit bonus buff. Crit bonus affects team. Buff duration has been increased from 5 to 10 seconds. Okay, that's we may need to... I'm gonna just quickly remind myself. What Serena does, her S1... so it used to increase her own critical rate, but now she gives a team-wide crit buff. That's pretty big. Okay, so Serena I would put in the big buffs category, if we can find her. There she is. Halloween Odetta. Odds increased by about 50%, defense down increase. Just for her S1? Yeah, just her S1, so that is I would put in the slight buffs category. And another thing to note is that some characters, there's speculation that if they're in the slight buffs category, for example, Halloween Odetta is likely going to see a spiral in the near future. The same can be said for Halloween Edward, for example, but at the moment I need to find Halloween Odetta, because this is getting tricky. There we go, Halloween Odetta. So I put her in slight buffs, and with the caveat that she'll probably likely see a spiral in the near future. So next along we have Kuhai, Windsword, over doubled mods for his S1, and his S2 increased the powered up 4 strikes, and so debuff on his 4 strikes. But those mods have been doubled, so I'd probably put Kuhai in the huge buffs category. And obviously I might not be 100% consistent between... No, big buffs category, big buffs category. But his S1 mods have been over doubled, so you know what? Huge buffs. I'm not going to be 100% consistent in my rating of characters, because for characters like Kuhai, yeah, he wasn't even in the meta before. But that's tricky to say. Anyway, Templar Hope. He hasn't even been spiraled, but his defensive buff on his S1 has now gained the 15% team strength buff. Then his skill 2, his mods, if you look at that, level 2, 2 times 338% to 2 times 1400%. That is definitely in the huge buffs category. And Templar Hope essentially has become Patio, so Patio is good. And even then, spiraled Patio as well, because Patio didn't have the strength buff on her S1 until post-spiral. So, looking at Odetta... So it's just an increase to the defense down chance, and the mods are unchanged. Even here, there's question marks. There's question marks in the sort of rundown of the changes there, so definitely question marks and potentially an indicator for an incoming spiral. There we go. She is sort of skirting the line between no changes and slight buffs. So, unfortunate for Odetta. So Berserker, let's look at him. Over doubled increase in mods for his skill 1. And now his skill 2, which used to raise his max hit points, he now gains a personal strength buff for 15 seconds. So Berserker, definitely... I'd say I put him in the huge buff section. If I can find him, there he is. Next, Ordric, Shadow Sword. Mods have been doubled, he even gained a damage bonus against poisoned enemies, and then his S2 doubled, added poison, and then extra damage against poisoned enemies. So Audric definitely in the huge buff section. There he is. So Audric in the huge buff section. 5-star sword, Naveed. So the power of his blades has been doubled. The base strength of the skill has seen about 75% increase. And then his S2 post spiral gives him a 20% strength buff for 10 seconds. So Audric definitely... Audric? Naveed definitely in the huge buff section again. And I believe Naveed was one of the earliest added 5-star adventurers. And now my theory of the order of entry is completely off, because he's next to the Smith sisters, which I don't remember being that early. Anyway, Leah, Flamesword. S1, over doubled mods. And then over tripled against burning enemies. And then Floral Revolution, her counter skill, over doubled mods. And if she's above 60 hit points, it it damages her by 20% of her maximum hit points. So she gains a base amount of counter damage as well. So definitely in the huge buff section. And it's tricky for Leah as well, because before, in endgame fights like High Midgard Sorma, she'd struggle to use the counter due to, most of the attacks just killing you, and there not being really that many attacks that you could counter. Anyway, Hunter Berserker has received pretty meaty buffs to, somewhere in the realms of about 50% in terms of hit strength for his, that might be exactly 50%, in terms of his S1 mods, and then his Force Strike changes. Force Strike's been buffed by almost double. So Hunter Berserker is someone I'd slot in the big buff section. From Flamesword, they've increased the power of his S1 by double, and that's about it. No changes to his S2, nothing else. Does that mean we might be seeing a Crom Spiral? I don't know. Definitely somewhere in the slight to moderate buffs thing. I'd say moderate as it was a double, but only on one of his skills. If we can find him... There he is. Moderate buffs for Crom. Xander... Goodness me. Okay, so mods for Xander have been doubled. Mods for his S2 doubled. And his powered up Force Strikes doubled and also gained extra damage against frostbitten enemies. So yeah, sure. Xander definitely in the huge buff section due to doubling mods and gaining the Force Strike killer on, Frostbite killer on his Force Strikes. Would I put that in big buffs? Somewhere skirting the line between big and huge buffs for Xander. Thermoceliera, I'd say that's doubled on her S1 post spiral, and skill 2, that's just a touch over doubled. But no changes to the buffs that she gives to her team, so I'd say big buffs, right? Yeah, if that's the case, I'd probably put, I mean, they were skirting the line, right? So Xander, let's put him in big buffs, and who was it? Summer Celiera. She's probably going to be next to Celiera in this list, huh? Yeah. Summer Celiera, big buffs. Eugene Water Sword, increase the strength of his strength buff in his S1 by 5% all around. Is that a moderate buff, slight buff? Somewhere along those lines. It's hard to say. Probably a slight buff. Galaranzel, S1 over doubled in strength. His S2. Let's see. Gave him the Force Strikes, right? Those mods have over doubled as well. And the Force Strike gain has increased, his burst gauge skill fill rate, burst gauge fill rate has increased, and even the damage boost to his S1 has increased. So definitely putting Galaranzel in the huge buff section. Wedding Elizan, the meta breaker when she arrived, And that looks like 50% increases to our S1 and S2, so I put her in moderate buffs. So she hasn't seen that much of a huge increase to her damage. I think Templar Hope definitely wins out compared to Wedding Alazan now, in terms of like a wind sword that can heal at the same time. Next along we have Gala Leaf. Slight increases to his S1, like 10% even, somewhere along those lines. Then his combos have had slight increases. So yeah, Gala Leaf in the slight buff section, because he was fairly decent before at the top, like near the top of the wind roster before. Right, Albert Light Sword. Let's say like somewhere in the realms of 2k against paralyzed enemies. With the buffs, and then... oh my god. This is almost 4k. So it looks like Albert's S1 has basically been doubled in power. There's a lot of numbers to chew through here. So against non-paralyzed enemies, almost doubled, depending on which mods you're looking at. So I'd probably put him in the moderate to big buff section. Here we are. And moderate to big buffs. He's somewhere there, right? Gala Prince. So, Gala Prince, 4 times power on his S1. S2 now deal double the damage, as well as charging twice as quickly. So definitely a strong contender for the huge buff section. Essentially 4 times on both his S1 and S2. No other changes to his mods, but something to consider whether we might need just another like Gala Prince. If I wanted to, I would put him in a tier of his own. Next up we have the 5-star Shadow Sword Yaten. Over doubled mods on his S1, and his S2 used to just give energy, so there he is. If it's over doubled, I'd put him in the huge buff section. 3-star AoE Flame Blade. Roughly 50% increase in mods. Oh, and it also gains Punisher against burning enemies. So over doubled for S1 against burning enemies, otherwise just a roughly 50% increase. S2, slight buffs to the base power level. 790 to 1106 is, say, somewhere in the realms of like 30 to 40%, but then against burning enemies it's over doubled. Pretty good. Pretty good. So I'd put that in big buffs, as the double damage is conditional. So AoE, there we go. Durota Waterblade. Hasn't seen a spiral yet, but level 3 of his S1. I think it's actually seen something slightly similar. A skill 2 has increased duration. It also says improve the effect strength. So selfish strength buff. I'd put him in somewhere in the moderate to big buff section. No, definitely moderate, as he doesn't have a second damaging skill. And I feel like he might have room for a spiral in the future. So, similar buffs to his S1 compared to AoE, but his S2 slightly mediocre, but it being a self-buff skill, who knows. But they've definitely got some power there. Halloween Edward is someone I've mentioned already, but like roughly 25% increase to his mods here on S1 and S2, and that's it. So he's definitely a strong contender for the incoming spiral sort of thing. 3-star Taro, Shadow Blade. He sees something similar, 293 to 384. In fact, that essentially echoes the same kind of mods we see with Edward. Then S2 as well. Oh, and he also inflicts bleed now, so he is budget Ieyasu. So 50% increase to the base mods, then also bleed. So I put him in the slight to moderate range. You can find him. Taro, there he is. Slight to moderate range, let's put him in moderate. Story Lexi the Flame Blade. Mods have been greatly increased. That is almost triple. No, in fact that's over triple, that's almost 4 times. Goodness me. And then her self-strength buff has been tripled at level 1, 20% to 50%, so that is a 150% buff to her self-buff. So definitely huge, big to huge buffs there for Lexi. That's just story Lexi as well. Then 4-star Celiero Water Blade. So without S2 active, nothing's changed. And then roughly double damage against frostbitten enemies, and otherwise kinda standard. Probably put that in moderate buffs. It's kinda tricky for her. Then Summeranzel, goodness me. 216% to 674 is over triple. And strength buff, his S2 strength buff has been doubled as well, so that's pretty strong. I mean, they recognize that he was very, very weak before, thankfully. So Summeranzel, huge buffs. 4-star Musashi Windblade, slight buff, very slight, so 2 times 432% to 484%. Gained Punisher against poisoned enemies, but honestly, the base damage level? I feel like there's definitely room for a spiral here, so I put him in... Let's see, strength level wise is at like 1.5 times damage against poisoned enemies? And there's S2 selfish buff again, 5 to 15 seconds. I'd put him probably in the slight to moderate buff section. Definitely room for a spiral, I think. Something like that. So, 4-star Addis Windblade, very slight buffs. So 4 times 216% to 4 times 281%, that is roughly like 25% buff? Maybe 30%? 30% buff? Definitely room for a spiral for Addis. Light buffs there. Then 4-star Yashio, mods increased by 432 to 648, I want to say is roughly 50% increase, S1. And his S2, well, Yashio's S2, her S2, 704% to 915. Right, that's the 4th strike, right? 704 to 915, so that's roughly 33%-ish buff, I'd like to say. Or even less, actually. Maybe somewhere in the realms of 25%, something like that. I'd put that in slight to moderate, something along those lines. There she is. Huh. Slight buffs? Slight to moderate, I'd say, for her. Definitely room for a spiral for her. Hanabusa, the Raid Light Blade. S1 has gone from... Yeah, it's hard to say, so... Because it's 3 stages, right? Let's just look at the final stage and we'll see, like, rough flavor. Seems like a roughly 33% increase if we go from 1,256 to 1,633. That's like just under 400. So I would say somewhere in the realms of 25 to 33% in terms of strength buff for his S1. Then his S2 increase the level of strength buff. So I want to say slight to moderate again for Hanabusa. There we go. Slight to moderate, hard to say. I mean, like these two tiers here, somewhat interchangeable. They could be the same tier almost. So Durant is skill 1. They adjust the effect so that a certain percentage affects the entire team. So he now has a team-wide slight strength buff. Kind of makes sense with his whole wolf theme. So the total strength buff to Durant himself remains the same. Ah, that's odd. So that is definitely somewhere in the very slight buffs range. Does this mean that we could potentially see a Durant spiral in the future? I wouldn't say that it's confirmed a Durant spiral, but there's definitely room for one. Mikoto, we saw him with a spiral just the other day, but pre to post spiral damage has, well, essentially doubled, I'd say? Depends. 3 times 213 to 3 times 414. So like the initial hits are stronger. Let's have a look at the total damage. This is like roughly 1800 total damage, and here it's roughly 1000. Or just over 1000. So like, you could say it's 50 to 75% buff in terms of strength. And is that online? Is that in line with what we'd expect? I'm not entirely sure. Like, as with everyone else, I am also learning, you know, the new meta As for example, like people are seeing a lot less Marth compared to before, and many more Gala Min did. 5-star Flameblade Reyna, so against Burning, roughly 1400 at final phase, and now deals 2600 I want to say, somewhere along those lines. 1400 to 2600 is 50 to 60% buff to S1. Oh wait, this is just level 1, you're looking at level 3. So 1200 plus roughly 500%, so roughly 1700% to 4 times 2, so 880, 2800. Yeah, roughly like 70 to 80% buff in terms of total strength level, I feel like. Reyna is probably in the moderate to big buff section. But her S2 is unchanged, so maybe more skirting to moderate. Nobunaga's S1, maybe like, definitely say this is in the 30 to 40% range in terms of S1 buff. Then her S2 almost doubled in damage against buffed enemies, otherwise standard damage increased by about 50%. So 50% increase to her S2 base levels, roughly, and then the buff killer by a significant amount. So I'd probably put Nobunaga in the moderate buff section. Moderate buffs. Valerio, Waterblade. So this looks like roughly 130% increase. Oh, hold on, need to be looking at level 3. And 130 to 245. Almost doubled. And the same for his other stances too. Combo strength, yeah, that's roughly 30% increase in strength. So Valerio I would put in the moderate buff section. He was definitely doing okay in terms of his overall strength in the water roster before, so no huge complaints there. 5-star Victor Windblade, and that's an increase of about 150%, so about 70-ish% increase to his S1, getting the bleed. S2 almost, actually I think that is directly doubled. Doubled S1, almost doubled. No, doubled S2, almost doubled S1 is in the, I'd say that's in the big buff section. Big buffs. Beautician Zarden. And let's see, level 3. Looks like an almost 50% increase, and then they added a 5% defense down debuff, which is okay. And his S2 now buffs his strength by 50% for 15 seconds. To be fair, his S2 was pretty bad before. Adding stun to his auto attacks. Okay, I would put that in the slight to moderate buff section. Maybe in the moderate buff section, but there's definitely room for a spiral for Beautician Zarden. He's up here. 5-star Garluka, roughly 40% increase. Hold on, so roughly 1200 to 2000. That's like 60% increase, right? Yeah. 60% increase to his S1, his main damaging skill. I would put that in the moderate buff section. But Garluka, damn, he was pretty powerful before, so it makes sense that we'd see a less overhaul style change to him. Oh wait, I'm looking in the wrong section. Garluka is an ult, so he'll be closer to the top. 5-star Natalie, Shadow Blade, roughly 50% increase to her S1, her S2 strength buff has been increased and the duration's longer. Okay, I would put that in the moderate buff section. There we go, there is Natalie. Moderate buffs. Renelle, spiraled S1 went from 237% to 237 to 285, so I'd call that roughly 20% increase, but also gained Burning Punisher. That's a moderate increase, roughly 50% against burning enemies, and then her skill 2 also now has a defense down. So Renelle somewhere in the moderate to slight to moderate buff section. Francesca, 3-star Wind Dagger. S1 now poisons, and also roughly, actually over 50% increase to the mods, and also poison punisher, so that's a decent buff to her S1, and her S2 increases defense so it does not stack, and also inflicts poison. But otherwise the potency's been changed, so I put Francesca's definitely in the slight to moderate buff section, which could mean that she gets a spiral in the future. 3-star Light Dagger Earthan, and I'd say that's kind of high, somewhere in the realms of 50% increase to his S1 and the defense down debuff. And his S2 has been doubled in odds, so somewhere in the slight to moderate range, but more leaning towards moderate due to his doubling mods for S2. Vice has been nerfed, if you didn't know already. He's lost roughly 25, would I say 25%? Like 20 to 25% on his S1, but they added poison. It's a strange, like, you'd think that the added poison is a buff, but it feels like it reduces the amount of freedom you get when you want to inflict poison, because now Shadow has the issue where it over-inflicts poison, so being able to hold back on poisoning and just act as a poison enabler instead of stacking it super quickly doesn't feel all that great. And his S2, goodness me, 2 hits of roughly 800% to 2 hits of 458%. Yeah, that's pretty chunky, deep, like, almost 50% taken off on his S2 as well. Okay, 3-star Shadow Dagger Vida, S1 over doubled, and buffs to her 4 strikes. And her S2? Oh no, those are just buffs to her 4 strikes. I'm not entirely sure how Vida works, as I've never actually played her. But this looks good for her overall. Like, I definitely put her like over doubled S1. Definitely in the big buff section. Why she was next to Norwin there, I'm not entirely sure. But moderate to big buffs for Vida. Okay, no, definitely big buffs for Vida. Okay, 4-star Flame Dagger Melsa. And, oh goodness, it now inflicts burn. And the base power has been increased, so 6 times 124 to 6 times 190. That's roughly 50% increase, and then it adds burn for 12 seconds as well. And 1.6 times damage to burning enemies. Okay, that's a pretty big buff. S2 now also burns and inflicts increasing damage to burning enemies. And that has been... yeah, it's a pretty chunky damage buff to Melsa, so I put her in big buff section. And I'm not... I don't know, it's hard to say, because obviously, like, huge numbers increase, but contingent on having a burned enemy I think is a bit tricky. Because obviously a reliance on a status ailment means that, well, once you run out of that status ailment and the enemy builds up resistance, then you're sort of a bit out of luck. But let's see, 4-star Flame Dagger Yuya, doubled S1, and his S2 is now a team strength buff? Okay, that is big buff overall, like team-wide strength buffs. Pretty powerful. And probably one of the reasons why the spiral to Elizan recently has been very, very controversial. There we go. Big to huge. Doubled, and then... I could put him in huge. He's somewhere skirting the line there. 4-star Water Dagger Luther. Roughly, no, over 50% increase to his S1. And then he's gained Frostbitten Punisher. Okay, pretty huge. So capping at 526%, so he's gained double damage against Frostbitten enemies. His S1 and his S2 has gained over 50% as well. So let's see, our baseline for big buffs was like roughly doubled mods, so if he's gained double against Frozen, slightly less, he's somewhere in the moderate to big buff section, I guess. 4-star Dagger, awesome. Doubled mods. Default mods have been doubled, and then he also gains 1.3 times damage to Frostbitten enemies. S2, doubled, And also inflicts frostbite. Okay, so like Awesome's now self-sufficient, deals double damage on his S1, over double damage against frostbitten enemies, so Awesome definitely in the big, huge buffs section. The Renee, 4-star Water Dagger Renee. S1 almost tripled. S2 over doubled. And obviously the S1 gains the defense down debuff, so she's in the huge buff section, I guess. There we are, huge buffs, Renee. 4-star Wind Dagger Sufang from the raid event. Spiral now deals 2.5 times damage against poisoned enemies. That's kinda disappointing, but what can you do against raid welfare characters? So Fritz, 4-star Light Dagger, over doubled S1, S2 now deals double damage? Base damage doubled against paralyzed enemies. Doubled. Nice. And added a buff to Paradox Force Strikes that increases its critical rate. Also very nice. Okay, so Fritz. Yeah, in the big buffs to huge buffs section. Because Fritz wasn't really used before, and to be fair, there's not many enemies that you apply stun to, so overall, that's not Fritz. Overall, put him in the big to huge buff section. 4-star Dagger, clear, now deals, S1 now deals 2 times damage to paralyzed enemies instead of 1.8 times. So definitely in the slight buff section. There we are. We're in the slight buff section. 4-star Shadow Dagger Orion. Level 3 went from 166% to 415%, number of hits unchanged. And his S2, similar sort of power level increase. Goodness me. And he was a shadow unit already, but he just didn't have Shadow's levels of damage. Yeah, 1600-ish on both skills. I think that is a clear contender for the huge buffs rating. And he still has room for a spiral, I feel. 4-star Story Shadow Dagger Alex. Very slight 10% buffs. Yeah, maybe not even 10% to her S1, that's strange, but she is a story unit. And then S2 mods have been increased by, I'd say, about 50%. Yeah. I put her in moderate buffs. Slight to moderate because the changes to her S1, barely there. Probably in the slight buff section. 5-star Flame Dagger Ezalith. Now deals an extra... Okay, so the base hits have stayed the same. Final hit is increased by 50%, so that's not too huge. And then the S2 duration's increased. And strength buff from 20 to 50% is pretty massive. Goodness me, okay, so she should be blowing things up. Absolutely blowing things up. Yeah, I'd definitely put her in the big to huge buff section. Ezalith. Somewhere in those. Somewhere in here. Big buffs. 5-star Dagger Diagonal Cleo. Almost tripled on her S1 and her S2. Also almost tripled. Very nice. Diagonal Cleo goes in the huge buff section. 5-star Water Dagger Mitsuba. The level 3, that is double damage on her S1. Against the Sashimi stance. Tempura's damage against frostbitten enemies increased. And her combo damage increased by about 25% for her Sashimi stance. Tempura's stance has seen a roughly 30% increase as well. 20 to 30%. So I'd probably put her in the slight buff section, but with the amount of cheese that Mitsuba enables by herself, I wouldn't worry too much about her buffs being lackluster. Her main contribution mainly comes from what she enables her teammates to do. There she is. I have no idea why she's between Marth and Xuanzang, but there we go. Slight buffs. 5-star Water Dagger Tiki. Very slight increases in realms of about 20% to her 25%-ish to a standard combo, depending on the hit. Her S1 now deals double damage, almost, or over double damage, then almost triple damage against frostbitten enemies, and her S2 964% to 1205% to 1808, so that's roughly 50%, and then an additional 1.5 times Punisher against frostbitten enemies, dealing 2712% on her S2, so definitely strong contender for the huge buff section. But it doesn't seem that there's been any sort of changes to how she interacts with shared skills and that kind of thing. So it's a mixed bag for Tiki. I may have been hoping to see more, but she lacks flexibility, but has now gained huge hits, essentially. 5-star Wind Dagger Wedding Aoi. S1 just a bit over doubled in power, and her S2 now deals 5 times the amount of damage, 140% to 700%, and that's 5 hits, so 3500% on her S2. Pretty nuts. Wedding Aoi definitely in the strong buffs. Huge buff section. 5-star Wind Dagger Summon Orwin. Goodness me. Right, so this is slightly tricky. Wait, it looks like maybe 50% increases to his skill 2? Well, okay, no. Well, skill 2 and skill 1 are actually, well, they were identical, but it looks like they only increased the power of his skill 2 just to, you know, have a little bit more thought, and obviously increase the huge strength levels. So I'd like to say this is roughly a 60% increase to his strength levels. 50 to 60%, somewhere along those lines. I think it's 50%. Anyway, Summon Orwin. Summon Orwin in the moderate buff section. So next along we have 5-star Light Dagger Mitsuhide. S1 level 3 went from 12 times 61% to 12 times 88%, so that's almost 50% on her S1. Her S2 has seen, again, almost 50%, so moderate buffs for Mitsuhide. Definitely better than the buffs that Fleur got, so I think before, like, Mitsuhide only slightly edged out against Fleur in terms of the DPS charts, that kind of thing. So it's good to see that she got a stronger buff to sort of encourage building her over the budget dagger Fleur. 5-star Light Dagger Wukong from the raid has increased in, oh, let's have a look here. Increased 546 to 819 at final level. So originally phase 3 dealt 600%, it now deals 1500%. So that is a 2.5 times increase in terms of power. Here's S2, roughly 50% increase as well, if not exactly. 2.5 times on S1 and then 50% on S2. I think that averages out to a huge buff considering how much more often the S1 comes out. So Wukong, huge buffs. 5-star Light Dagger Yukata Current, a very recent addition. Increase of 55%, so 50% base damage increase and then extra damage against paralyzed enemies, that is almost double. And then when masked, roughly 50% and then almost doubled against paralyzed enemies. And he has gained Paralysis Punisher on his S2. I put him in the moderate buff section. Categorisation. There he is. 3-star Water Axe Rex. So roughly 33% increase to the base damage, now inflicts Frostbite, and against frostbitten enemies it deals almost double the amount of damage it used to before, so goodness me, 2k on an S1 for an axe, that is pretty chunky. His S2, 933% to 1213%, so roughly 20 to 30% increase in strength, and also Frostbitten Punisher as well as Frostbite. Okay, he is self-sufficient Frostbite X now. It's hard to say where he goes though. Definitely in the big buffs section. If I can find him. There we are. 3-star Johanna Wind Axe. Increase the power of skill 1. And it also inflicts poison and increased damage against poison enemies. So Johanna and... seems like Johanna and Rex have received the same sort of treatment. Yeah, Johanna and Rex, roughly equivalent 3-star axes. 3-star Linus, Light Axe. His skill 2 now has a team strength buff. Goodness me, that is definitely a slight buff if I've seen one. Okay, potential Linus Spiral. Incoming 4-star Flame Axe Vanessa. Roughly 25 to 30% increase on her skill 1, and that is it. Definitely a slight buff there. 4-star Flame Axe Yue. Over doubled S1. And her S2. Decent buff to the critical rate as well. I remember exactly that, well, I happen to specifically remember that Yue's S2 is a shareable one, so now its value as a shared skill has increased. So Yue definitely in the big buff section. Just doubled S1, and obviously critical rate increasing from 20 to 30% is pretty significant. There we are, big buffs for Yue. See, 4-star Flame Axe Karina. Flame Axe? Water Axe Karina. Roughly 25 to 30. No, I can't count anymore. Roughly 60% increase to her S1. That is about it. I mean, I'd say that's a moderate buff to Karina. 4-star Wind Axe Ranzel. Roughly 50% increase to his S1. Again, moderate buff. 4-star Light Axe Samaluka. S1 deals almost about 80%, I want to say, no, about 75% extra damage-ish. Or maybe like somewhere in the realms of 60%. Let's gain the defense down debuff. That doesn't stack. And the amount of energy... Because S2 now deals... adds user strength and adds energy. Well, Luca, I believe that used to add... It also adds attack rate as well, so... That's a pretty decent buff to his S2. That's also the shared skill, if I remember correctly, so... I'm gonna say... somewhere in the realms of big buff, moderate to big buff for Samaluka. 4-star Shadow Axe Sazanka. Moderate, very moderate increases. 50%-ish to her S1. And her S2 now also increases her strength by 30% for 15 seconds, and her powered up 4 strikes. Over doubled. I think Sazanka was kind of weak even on release. Definitely overshadowed, pun not intended, by Ieyasu. But I think she definitely has room for a spiral. 5-star Flame Axe Ramona now has a critical rate buff to her S1, extra damage against burning enemies, but otherwise the initial damage has been unchanged. So I would probably put Ramona in the slight to moderate buff section. There she is, Ramona, slight to moderate, somewhere along those lines. 5-star Water Axe Elizan. Her strength buff's been untouched, but her S2 is at roughly 4 times the amount of damage. Just a bit under 4 times the amount of damage on her S2. And her S1 unchanged. Goodness me. I put her in the big buff section? Or maybe the huge buff section. I don't know. We never really used her S2 for damage anyway, right? And it comes up pretty slowly. It's a very minor part of her kit. Like, to the point where people still build her for strength buffing ability. I don't know. This potentially opens up the option for building Dragalia as a DPS unit, possibly. I'm not entirely sure. I think this would have to come down to some experimentation with the simulator kind of thing, or just people trying her out. We'll see. 5-star Water Axe Lazari, S1, say roughly, is that almost somewhere in the realms of like 60 to 80% increase on his S1, and S2, 75% increase, S as well. And then skill 2 in Forge mode. Oh no, this is just the S1, okay. So 75% increase to S1 roughly, and S2 over 50%, so also along the same lines. So no overall changes to the kit, but increased in damage. So I'd say moderate buffs to Lazari. 5-star Wind Axe Lineal. Let's see. S1 roughly 186 to 242%, I would say. It's about a 33% increase in strength, and then S2 now deals add strength as well. I'd definitely say that kind of falls in the moderate buff section. 5-star Wind Axe Lineal. Sama Amane, Wind Axe. Healing Wind Axe. Now has a strength buff on her S2. It's definitely a slight buff if I've ever seen one. And we have 5-star Light Axe Julieta. Received a spiral recently, but still sees roughly 30% increases to her power level on her S1. And then her S2 now has extra strength. Okay, yeah, so this is a kind of buff that we wanted to see before, but before they was just like, oh hey, now prevents knockback. Great, sure. Definitely... Where would I put this? Moderate buffs, I believe. Julieta. 5-star Light Axe Jubajier. 250% increase. Who's S1? In terms of pure modifier, so in terms of total power level, that's like in the realms of 20 to 30%, right? On his S1, so I'd say slight buffs, but even before the changes, he was doing pretty well anyway. So, 3-star Flame Lance Elaine. Let's see, level 4, so post-spiral, power has increased by about 50% base damage, and against burning enemies, over double. And I believe we're seeing similar numbers on S2 as well, so yeah, definitely big buffs to 5-star, well, 3-star Flame Lance Elaine. 3-star Water Lance Sabella. Oh goodness. Okay, so S1 used to provide a shield, I believe. It now has a very slight team strength buff. S2, over 4 times the amount of damage. And I still think there's room for a spiral here, honestly. We'll see, we'll see. So this is roughly 4 times the amount of damage now, so I'd probably put Sabella in big buffs, due to the fact that she doesn't actually have a damaging S1. 3-star Water Lance Jacob, over doubled S1, and his S2, which was I believe a defense buffing skill, now also has a team strength buff, so he's like reverse. I'd like to say he's roughly reverse Patia, but without bleed. So big buffs for him as well. if we can find him. There he is. 3-star Light Lance Malka. Let's see. S1 has increased by, I'd say that's about 50%. And then very slight Paralysis Punisher, 10%. And also inflicts Paralyze. Okay. S2 now also has a Team Strength buff. I'd say definitely a slight to moderate buff for Malka, and definitely room for a spiral for him. So I want to say slight to moderate, probably moderate. 3-star Shadowlance Zace, and despite being a shadow unit, has received pretty decent buffs. I'd say about 60% to his S1. Now also has a defense stand debuff, and his S2 is about 60% as well. So moderate buffs to our Shadowlance Zace. Four-star Flame Lance Xuanzang from the... was it a raid event? Yeah, it was a raid event. And almost 50% buffs on her S1. And then an extra Punisher against... no, already had Punisher against debuffed enemies. Very light buff? Slight buff to Xuanzang. Four-star Wind Lance Aileen. Pretty much doubled S1 roughly, and her S2 now has a Team Strength buff, which is pretty good. Pretty good. I'd definitely put her somewhere in the realms of like moderate to big buffs. So like doubled S1 is pretty good, and Team Strength buff makes her S2 much more valuable. 4-star Wind Lance Pia, almost tripled S1, and now her team energy level increase is also a strength buff, and the level increase has gone from 1 to 2. Definitely huge buffs to Pia now, and she was pretty weak before, so I think she needed it. 4-star Light Lance Ryozan, and over doubled S1, no, over doubled S2, but his S1's still a defensive buff. I'd probably put him in the slight to moderate again. This is very much verging on moderate, slight, because his S1 has been unchanged, but it also means that I think you could see a spiral in the future. 5-star Flame Lance Gala Mim. S1 over doubled in potency, in fact I believe that is 2.5 times. She also has a 20% strength buff for 10 seconds on her S1 now, and her S2 has gone from 207 to 517% base damage, and post shapeshift has doubled. Goodness me. Her dragon form attacks doubled. Dragon skill doubled. And then twice also doubled, skill doubled. So her dragon form mods doubled, S1 over twice as powerful, as well as a strength buff, so Mim definitely in the huge buff section. It also explains why we've been seeing her a lot in terms of like Master Vault clears, so people have been saying. Nadine Flame Lance. S1 base hit has increased by over, I'd say that's somewhere in the realms of about 60%. And the bonus hits increased by the same hits. Is it? Somewhere along those lines. And a combo increased along the same lines as other adventurers. Force Strike unchanged. Bonus hits unchanged. That's just the base hit? No, so this is with the buff, I remember. So S2 unchanged, but decent increase to her S1. So I'd probably put her in the moderate buff section, as her S2 is unchanged, but her S2 has always been an S1 modifier anyway, right? So I don't think you can change it too much, so the majority of her change is in S1. But given that it's not really a doubled thing, I wouldn't really put her in big buffs healer, so moderate buffs for Nadine, if we can find her. 5-star Water Lance Xanthrid. S1 over doubled. Actually, that's pre-spiral. Post spiral is 230% to 529%. So that's over doubled on his S1 and then his S2. Almost tripled, goodness me. Okay, yeah, huge buffs for Xanthrid. 5-star Water Lance Fjorm. Went from 2 hits of 493% to essentially doubled, 2 times 986%, and gaining Frostbite Punisher, 50% Frostbite Punisher on his S1, and Ice Mirror increased by about 60%, I'd like to say, if not 50%, somewhere along those lines. Huge buff to her S1, moderate to big buff on her S2, but without the same treatment that Leah got in terms of the self-damaging above a certain health point, so I'd probably put her in big but not huge. Big but not huge? Big but not huge. But the Frostbite Punish is pretty substantial, huh? And it's on the S1. It's hard to decide. Now we just have to find her and put her in the list. There's Bjorn. Here we go. And she's definitely somewhere in the moderate to big buff section. 5-star Water Lance Catherine. Says that her S1, I believe they said that the patch notes have said that her S1's increased in power, but S2 hasn't changed? I believe S1 only just gave her a stack of her buff, right? Probably means that, like, her scaling strength with levels of, well, the guards essentially has increased. S2 doubled in power. Possibly. Let's have a look at level 3, level 2 that is. 3 stacks. Yeah, doubled in power, and then combo changes. Roughly 50% increase. I believe that's possibly what they changed, what they mean with her S1 increasing in power. So doubled S1, slight changes, no, doubled S2. I mean, that's the majority of Catherine's kit, right? The whole thing, so like moderate buffs, I would say. Silas Windlance. Increase the power of his S1 for some reason, very slight, even post-spiral. 552 or 828 against poisoned enemies to 189? Huh? Very slight buff to Silas, despite the fact that he was doing okay, and for the most part you used him for his buffs anyway. 5-star Light Lance Halloween Alazan, 7 times... Okay, so against paralyzed enemies, 7 times 140%, now deals 7 times 224%, so just over 50% on our S1, and S2, I believe we're seeing similar, about 60%-ish increase on S2. Combo increases with Vampire Maiden are probably roughly in line with the overall buffs we've seen to all Adventurers attacks, so I'd probably put her in the moderate buff section. On to Vanessa Light Lance, S1 roughly 50% increase to S1, and fully charged 4-strike effect, reduced defense effect has been increased. Definitely slight to moderate here. And there's Hunter Vanessa. Yeah, definitely somewhere skirting the lines between slight and moderate buffs. 5-star Light Lance Sharena. 439% to 746% are on S1. That is almost doubled, but not quite, so somewhere in the realms of like 75%, I'd like to say. Then Skill 2, Luna, 1100 to 1850, about 1900% as well. So she's definitely pretty strongly in the moderate buff section, verging on big buffs due to just sheer numbers increases. 5-star Shadowlance Lathna. See, it's just her S1. Okay, 3 to 7 times 237% to 260. Then against poisoned enemies, roughly, I want to say that's roughly 50% increase for S1, and then S2 has simply increased the modifier against poisoned enemies from 1.5 times to 2 times. I'd like to say moderate buffs for Lathna, and do note that Lathna has a special dragon form unique to her, and that saw no increases post rebalance. We go Lathna in the moderate buff section. 3-star Flamebow Joe, and that's roughly 50% increase at base power level, and then 60% Burning Punisher is pretty good, but I don't think it removes. And then roughly 50%, yeah, 50% increase to S2 as well as the extra Punisher. But obviously Joe still has to compete with the fact that he potentially over-applies burn. So 3-star Waterbow Wake. Doubled mods on his S1, as well as extra 20% Frostbite Punisher, and also inflicts Frostbite now. And then his S2 also doubled in mods and also gained Frostbitten Punisher. Definitely say that's somewhere in the huge buffs, big buffs to huge buff section. And Philia, Wind Bow, 3 stars. I suspect she's probably gained a similar sort of treatment. Okay, so 262% is the same mods that Wake had, but it's seen a less violent increase. It's strange how she doesn't see quite as big of an increase. But then S2 sees an increase to Frostbitten Punisher. Oh, Poisoned Punisher, that is. At 1.2 times. But the skill still paralyzes. Very strange. So Philia's weird. Put her in the moderate buff section, and definitely there's probably room for a spiral for her. Melora's seeing a similar sort of thing. So, moderate increases to the strength, added paralysis, and also paralysis. And S2 has gone, I'd say that's roughly a 50% increase to its power as well. So moderate buffs to Melora? Moderate buffs to Melora, if we can find her. 4-star Flamebow Azalith, very slight buffs to her 1, doubled mods on F. But it's also gained Burning Punisher. Okay, so I'd say moderate buffs to Valentine's Azalith, but she's probably also got room for a spiral. 4-star Waterbow, Dragon Nefaria. Now inflicts Frostbite, now has Frostbite Punisher, and the overall mods have increased just under double, yep. And the S2 now increases energy by 3 instead of 1. I believe that was a team-wide, or at least under her unique Force Strike. So definitely big buffs for Dragon Melora but tripling the energy means that she can probably energize much easier. Okay, I think we probably quite comfortably put her in huge buffs, but she was exceedingly weak before anyway. Next, Eleonora, 4-star Wind Bow. Just under doubled base damage, but now also gained a 50% Poisoned Punisher. S2, same kind of thing. just under doubled, and increased with Poison Punisher. So definitely in the huge buff section for Eleonora. Four-star Joachim, Wind Bow. Oh, that's really weird. They've decreased the power of his base mod, but increased the Poison Punisher, which is curious. What? So against poisoned enemies it deals more damage, but at base it deals less? Okay, assuming high poison uptime for Joachim and wind teams overall, then yeah, that's a slight buff, but a bit odd. Huh. Anyway, 4-star Luca, 4-star Lightbow Luca from the story now has Paralyzed Punisher 60% and the same for S2. Okay, moderate buffs, I would call that. Then 4-star Lightbow Rawn, doubled mods on S1, defense debuff on S2. No, doubled mods on S1 alongside the defense debuff, and then S2 also doubled mods. So yeah, he's pretty solidly in the big buff section. 4-star Lightbow Elias, but doubled S1. And then S2... Oh, not quite doubled for level 3, huh? Then his S2 increases energy team... I believe it was at team energy? And also has a strength buff, so I put him in moderate buffs for Elias. Elias is here. Slight to moderate buffs. 4-star Shadowbow Norwin. I'd say that's roughly 50% increase. A bit more, actually. Base mods to his S1, and then 50% Poison Punisher. Pretty meaty. And his S2. Roughly 50% as well. And an increase to the Poisoned Punisher. So he's pretty solidly in the moderate buff section. Not quite big buffs, but moderate buffs. For Norwin. There we go. Norwin in moderate buffs. 5-star Flamebow Cerise, or at least Garner Cerise. 50%-ish increase to the base damage of her S1. Not counting the shots. Shots have stayed the same. Now her S2 is... so her S2 used to increase defense, alternate between buffing strength and defense, something along those lines, and now it just always increases team strength, which is pretty good. Okay, I'd say that's a moderate buff to Gala Cerise. Or is it a big buff due to the constant strength buff? Pretty good. Skirting there, I think you probably have to look to a sim to see where it really lands. 5-star Flamebow Chelsea, and I'd say that's roughly 50-60% to her S1, and damage only increased when under the Obsession effect, which is basically her whole shtick anyway, right? Her S2, moderate buffs for Chelsea. Moderate buffs for Chelsea. 5-star Waterbow Laranoa, doubled S1, and then strength buff increase on her S2, and also duration increase for her S2. Oh, okay, so strength buff doubled, so her S2 is over twice as powerful, so Laranoa pretty solidly in the big buff section, if not huge. Not quite huge, but definitely big buffs. 5-star Waterbow Hunter Cerise, S1 over doubled in strength, and her 4 strikes her whole shtick. Also over doubled. Nice. So I would probably put her in the pretty solidly in the big buff section. So Hunter Cerise, here we go, big buffs. 5-star water bow Pinon, S1, 50% increase, her S2 now has a huge strength buff. Goodness me. Okay, so yeah, Pinon really solidly in big buffs, if not huge buffs. And her force strikes doubled. Yeah. And then her special combo increased by about 20%. Actually, it's hard to say. Considering she wants to spend as much of her time as possible, it could be potentially, you know, in the moderate buff section, despite the 50% increase to her S1. Because those skills always interrupt her special combo, which she wants to be maximizing. Okay, I think Pinon probably in the moderate buff section. 5-star Windbow Louise. And I'd say that's roughly... I need to do the maths here. Roughly 75% increase in strength to her S1, so it's okay. I'd say that's a moderate buff. 5-star Lightbow Summer Cleo has only had her S1 changed. It just added an effect to increase damage to, so it just has 10% Paralyzed Punisher. Okay, that's definitely a slight buff. Summer Cleo, slight buff. Then let's see, 5-star Nefaria Shadow Bow. Very slight increase, goodness me, to her S1. 106% to 114%. That's curious. Hold on, they seem to be implying that her... Okay, so her spiral just added the poison punisher compared to... Oh, actually that's the same pre-spiral as well. So yeah, definitely still slight buff to Barrier. Shadowbow Valentine's Addis. I want to say that's roughly 50% increase. So up to 50% increase to his base mod for his S1, but the crisis effect has been decreased. So his damage overall has increased, and he's less reliant on his crisis effect. I'd say that's somewhere in the slight to moderate range. Probably slight if you're maximizing your use of him at using the crisis mechanic. So 3-star Flame Wand Xania. Very slight increase to the base damage. And now has Burning Punish. Okay. So I'd say that's somewhere in the moderate range. And then the same again for Spiral as well. So moderate buffs to Xania. 3-star Wind Wand Nicholas. S1 almost doubled. S2 almost doubled, and also has a strength. No, a defense buff. Curious. So, almost and almost doubled, so that's pretty strong in the moderate to big buff section. I mean, yeah, the borders between these classes are getting a bit blurred, but I hope you get the rough idea. 3-star Light Wand Chalet. Now inflicts paralysis, and also has 10% Paralyzed Punisher. So that is incredibly slight as far as I can tell. 4-star Flame Wand Sonoa. S2 unchanged, S1 almost tripled. Definitely say that's a big buff in my book, because the S2 didn't really need any changes. Buffs, I think, probably need fewer changes than others. So yeah, tripled S1, definitely in the big buff section. Well, not quite tripled, but you get the idea. 4-star Water Wand Dragon Xander. Doubled, power on S1, and then S2 his buff. At level 2, doubled duration increase, energy increase. Okay, so really solidly, well, maybe borderline big buffs. 4-star Water 1 Summit Estelle, 50% increase to the S1 power, and slight increase to the strength buff on her S2, so Summit Estelle in the moderate buffs section. There we are. 4-star Water 1 Pipple. His skill 2 now has a strength buff. Huh. I believe that was a energy increase before? So 30% for 15 seconds, and then Pipple combo. Goodness, like 25% increase to his combo, which is, you know, his main shtick. So, with the added strength buff, and that gives you a reason to use skill 2, but Pipple definitely in the moderate buff section. Dragalia Lost, Wind Wand, S1, has a team strength buff for 15 seconds, regardless of element. But I believe his base buff is still wind specific? Yeah, definitely slight buffs. Nintendo. 4-star Light Wand, Amane. Post Spiral. Now almost doubled. The bonus hits are now doubled. In fact, no, tripled, that is. Okay, so meaty buffs are S1. And then a S2 unchanged, so... want to say that's moderate to big buffs. 5-star Flame Wand, Student Maribel. Just a bit over 50% increase to her S1 and her S2. I'd say something similar, right? S2 like 60-ish%, so pretty solidly in the moderate buff section. Maribel. Student Maribel, that is. Mega Man. Skill 1 doubled. Skill... As a helper skill, it's only 50% increase. S2 doubled. Combo doubled. So Mega Man, big buffs. But I'm not too sure how much that helps him, actually. Incognito Nefaria. Goodness me. Okay, yeah. Like 30-ish% increase, as well as self-strength buff? Okay. Huh. Oh no, that's the S2. And obviously, you're going to see that energized every so often as well, right? I would say that's a moderate buffs for Incognito Nefaria. 5-star Water Wand Lily. Level 4 S1, roughly just a bit under 50% increase. It's also gained Frostbite Punisher. The S2. Also, similar sort of thing. 80% increase and Frostbite Punisher. The standard attacks. Buffed standard attacks. Also slightly more. Well, it's slightly harder. So, Lily in the moderate buff section, I believe. If not big. Well, she hasn't quite hit the double damage, but it's along those lines. 5-star Water Wand Urias. I'd like to say that's roughly 60-70% increase on his S1. S2, similar sort of story, about 60% as well. No, that's his S1. Ah, okay. 60%-ish increase on his S1. His S2. Ah, okay, that's also similar numbers actually. 363 to 447. And it's still got the same Frostbitten Punisher, so not too much to talk about here. Definitely moderate buffs for Urias. And standard Maribel 5-star Wind Wand. Say that's roughly 40 to 50% increase to our S1. The increase to the defense down has increased to 100%, no longer stacks, and S2 sort of 40-ish%. roughly 40% increase. And obviously it says here, this change was not documented on the notice, so documentation game somewhat weak for side games, but moderate buffs. The Maribel. 5-star Wind 1 Summer Snower. That's roughly 320% increase. 320 out of 1600 is 20%. 20% increase on her S1, definitely slight buffs for Summer Sonora. 5-star Light Wand, Radiant Xuanzang. Her S2, Team Strength buff, duration 15 to 30 seconds. Because I used to think it was it limited to the circle? I don't know. But duration increase from 15 to 30 seconds I'd say is a moderate buff. 5-star Shadow Wand for Veronica. Let's have a look at the crisis hits. So 4.2k versus about 3.5k before. So roughly 25% increase to her S1. I mean, she, when used well, she hit like a truck already, so slight buffs. Veronica, 5-star Shadow Wand, Cassandra, just over 300% increase. That's roughly 60-ish% increase to S1, and S2 a bit over doubled. Okay, I'll probably put Cassandra in moderate buffs. Okay, now we have the staves. 3-star staff, Oriane. So I think all the staffs have had a similar sort of buff. Oriane's S2 now deals over double damage. So I'd say Oriane, moderate buff. And then like team-wide strength buffs for the rest of the healers, I'd say probably puts them in slight buffs. So Ricard, slight buff. Sophie had a damaging S2, so it's her in moderate buffs too. Hope also has a strength buff. Hope has a slight buff. Estelle, same kind of story, if we can find her. Estelle with a strength buff. Edward with the strength buff. Verica, Halloween Lowen. Halloween Lowen has a even slighter buff to his strength. Okay, so Verica, slight buffs. Halloween Lowen, buffs. Nathaniel, 4-star Water Staff. Same again with the strength buffs. Aileen no longer has skill shift. Her strength buff has been increased. And also has a defense buff. Huh, okay, so she's seen like a moderate buff to her healing. And utility. Standard Lowen has gained a 15% strength buff to the team. It's strange that they only increased... that Lowen's seen a bigger increase than Halloween Lowen. Huh. Wedding Xania, same story. Halloween Althemia, strength buff. But Halloween Althemia has a damaging S2, right? So it feels like they're leaving her for a spiral. Same story for Vixel. Same story for Felicia. Same story for Cleo. This is the wrong Cleo. Standard Cleo. See, Valentine's Hildegard has a strength buff, and they've buffed her energy increase as well, so that's pretty good. 1 to 2 is pretty good. S2. Now just... So now she can energize with a full rotation of her skills, so I'd definitely say that like she's made a lot better in terms of an energy enabler. And let's see. S1 Fluorescent Fish, doubled in duration, doubled in non-elemental damage, so goodness me, that's pretty significant. I'd probably put that big buffs for Cassandra, right? And that's that's a multiplier on top of everyone else's buffs as well. Zhang Ziya, slight buffs. as the healers have gotten. Akasha as well. Strength buff on her S1, her S2. Oh, now damages enemies that enter. Heal her as well. In-game description does not match description of change in news post. Oh, it restores hit points to the entire team. Oh. So it deals damage and also heals the team. Probably class that as a moderate buff. Standard Hildegard has a strength buff on her S1. Verika, slight strength buff to her S1. It seems like a lot of seasonal units have had slightly more, slightly gentler buffs to probably leave room for spirals, and Grace, slight increase to the power of her 4 strikes. For the rest of the units here, we see Alazan, Gala Cleo, Gala Alex, Halloween Mim, Carl, Melody, Valentine's Melody, Dragon Yule, Melora, Summer Julieta, Eric, Rodrigo, Althemia, Simon, Pietro, Emma, Howdred, Hawk, Linnea? Did Linnea really see no changes? Huh. Porter, Annalie, Heinwald, Karin, Marth, Crescia, Belina, Botan, Yasu, Awujing, Alphonse, Patia, Delphi, Noel, Chitose, Tobias, Kirsty, Gold, Peony, Zena, Summer Mikoto, Summer Patia, Alexi, Nevin, and obviously Sharpshooter Joe didn't even exist before this. So this is the overall sort of, how to say it, this is like a rundown of how the buffs have spread across every single adventurer. Huge buffs to some where mods were like tripled, even quadrupled. Big buffs are in the range where sort of mods were doubled, maybe a bit less. Moderate buffs if we're seeing mods increase by about 50%, or sort of big changes in utility, slight buffs in the 25-ish% range. Or if like they gained slight strength buffs like the healers did, and then no changes, and then Vice obviously nerfed, as we said near the beginning. Alrighty, we're back again because it seems like we skipped over quite a few. So, in the process of going through the list of changes, it seems like we managed to skip the changes made to, first of all, Summer Julieta. So, Summer Julieta is... where in this list? Okay, so Summer Julieta, already corrected. Summer Julieta, if we look at left, on the left here, her mods have increased by, say, like over double, 2.25 times. Her S2 being a self buff means that, well, it sort of inherently scales with the increase to the mods on her S1. Next on the list we have Pietro, Star Water X, who changed by about 1.4 times-ish on his S1, and his S2 has gained a strength buff, so I'm pretty well in moderate buffs range. Pietro moves from no changes to moderate to possibly even big, depending on how much you value the strength buff on the S2. Next up we have Annalie, the 5-star Light Lance, over double, and the energy level increase as well means that it only takes out 2 casts of S2 to fully energize. Pretty good. That is pretty solidly in the big to huge buffs range. Big or huge? Well, she's very solidly in big, so we'll leave her there. Next along the list we have Alphonse, 5-star Light Sword from the Fire Emblem event, first time around. Had a slight increase to his S1 mods. gained a 50% Paralyzed Punisher on his S1 bar when Spiral. S2, very slight increase, as well as Paralyzed Punisher on Spiral. So almost double post-Spiral, but if you don't Spiral him, then it's very, very slight buffs. So I would probably say it counts as moderate. But if we were to just take it on... Yeah, I think either way it counts as moderate. Next in the list we have is... And then the final one that we managed to skip over is Gold, 4-star Water Lance. His S1 gained about... I'd say that's really a big buff. So base 253% to... Oh no. Against frostbitten enemies 253% to 608%. So over double on his S1 and his S2. I forget exactly what it does. I think that's okay though. Either way, that is the final rebalance with all the corrections. Thank you again to Silver on my Discord for picking up my mistakes. As always, take it easy, stay safe, and I hope you guys are enjoying the anniversary.